Welcome back to these series of lectures of Western Civilization, Part 1. I want to talk about a couple of topics today, over the next few lectures, that have to do with prehistory. Prehistory is, of course, before the written word, before we have explicit human communication across time. Prehistory refers to the Paleolithic era and even into the Neolithic era, for that matter. The two things I want to discuss are human language and then early thoughts that man had about religion, about life after death, perhaps. Let's talk about language first. Human language is it marks us as quite different from all the other creatures on this planet. Now, other creatures clearly communicate. You've seen the films on PBS where the bee comes back to the hive and does his dance to tell the other bees where the food is. Ants, of course, do the same thing. You've seen whales and dolphins communicate quite clearly. You've seen a lion pride coordinate a hunt. So, and of course, your own pets, your dogs and cats, communicate with you very effectively as well. So, human language is different from these other species in that it can anticipate the future and it can reflect on the past. Human language is also capable of creating myths that allow large groups of people who are separated in time and space to believe the same thing, whether it's fiction or not. An example would probably be money. That $20 bill in your pocket that'll buy you lunch later. We agree that that piece of paper with writing on it has value. That's the only reason it does have value, is because we all agree that it does. It's a fiction. It's a mythology. If you were on a deserted island and you had a $100 bill in one hand and a pineapple in the other hand, the pineapple would be more valuable. The $100 bill would not have any use on a deserted island, except maybe to start a fire with. So human language has the capacity to create ideals that, whether they're true or not, people scattered across vast distances and over time can agree on, whether this is religion, whether this is things like money, and other examples that we'll get into. Human language, we have fewer and fewer languages as we go forward in time. We have fewer languages today than we've ever had before. This is because of centralization, globalization. For instance, on the island of New Guinea, there used to be about 1,000 languages. That seems crazy. But when you think about New Guinea and the topography, you have the valleys and the mountains and the rainforest, and you have small groups of people who are separated by this difficult terrain. So their languages stay isolated and pristine. In time, as government control extends over the rainforest of New Guinea, these languages will be diminished in number as government imposes a common, uniform language on these people. The largest language in the world, I guess, is Mandarin Chinese, and English is second. Now, if you look at tiny little England up in Northwest Europe and ask yourself, how in the world could English be so widely spoken? And of course, Spanish is third or fourth in this list. These languages are so widely spoken because the Europeans, the English and the Spanish, took their languages with them when they colonized vast stretches of the globe. They took English to North America. The Spanish took Spanish to Central and South America, and to the Philippines and other places. So always make the connection between language and power, and language and politics. If you listen to the current political campaign in the United States today, you'll see that there's a great deal of controversy regarding immigration. And this controversy goes in part to language. There are Americans who do not like to see There are signs in Korean or Chinese or Mexican or otherwise. So language and power are linked, and language and politics are always linked. Now, we organize language into language families and language groups. English, of course, is a Germanic language. You're all familiar with the Romance languages. These are languages born of the Roman Empire and the Latin language spoken by the Romans. You have the Romanian and French and Portuguese, Italian and French. Characteristics of human language, just a few general thoughts here. In Homo sapiens, the larynx is much further down the throat, into the middle of the throat. If you look at other primates, you'll see that the larynx is at the back of the tongue, or at the back of the mouth. This is going to have a profound repercussion, because the larynx, being isolated as it is deeper into the throat, allows for greater flexibility, allows for the production of a wider variety of sounds. If you look at the teeth of Homo sapiens, you'll see that they're much smaller than that of the great apes and the chimpanzees, with whom we share very close relations. This allows more flexibility in the mouth to manipulate air and space, to create intricate language. I said earlier that human language can do something that apparently the whales and the dolphins can't, and that is anticipate the future and reflect on the past. We should also say that all human languages are capable of great complexity, not just those languages that are scattered far and wide, but even small isolated languages are capable of great complexity. Incentives for the development of language. Here we're talking about something that occurs in prehistory, so we have to speculate. Anthropologists suggest and linguists suggest that perhaps the coordination of the hunt may have been a spur to create language, to create an ambush of a herd of animals. Other incentives may be to create a system by which we can account for in trade or in swapping things, whether our daughters or trade items of some sort with another tribe. Perhaps language was spurred on by those long hours by the campfire, perhaps in a cave, where there is no internet, no television, and no CDs. People would probably recount their days and perhaps begin to tell stories. And language, of course, is essential for this. What else? Language is a source of power. So perhaps you can see language being spurred on by people who seek to persuade their fellow men and women to follow them in a particular direction or to do something that they're proposing to do. After all, politicians use persuasion to reach their goals most of the time. So these are a variety of ways that are factors that may have led to the development of language. I can think of another one, the teaching of children, the transference of technology, how to sharpen a stone to make a tool or a weapon out of it. So these are all factors that may have led to the development of human language. Languages, of course, borrow from each other. English is especially guilty of this, borrowing words from a wide variety of languages. In English, there are probably thousands upon thousands of words that are derived from the French. This has to do in part from the invasion of England by the Normans in the 12th century. When the Normans went to England, they took their language with them, and this language is now suffused throughout the English language. You use French terminology constantly, perhaps without thinking about it. We borrow from other languages. Arabic, the word zero, which is quite common, is from Arabic. Turkish words, caviar, coffee. Russian word, vodka. Vodka translates into water. Went back into the Russian. Gaelic with whiskey. And on, we constantly borrow And words are adapted and then sometimes dropped as they become less and less used. 3 language categories, I'm just going to mention them here. We have dead languages, we have moribund languages, and we have living languages. Dead languages are those that aren't spoken by large populations anymore. Sanskrit, Latin, dead languages. Latin, of course, is used by specialists. Doctors and lawyers and other specialists will use Latin. This is why they can charge such high bills for their services. They have access to a language that you do not. Moribund languages are those that are dying. They're not being taught to children. So a good example of this might be many of the Native American languages, as the Indian children are being taught English. And then, of course, living languages are those that are being taught to children and will survive into the next generation. I mentioned earlier that languages do disappear as we become increasingly globalized, as we become increasingly interconnected. Small, isolated languages will begin to wither away as governments impose a uniform language on the people that it governs. I'm going to mention 2 odd languages since we're talking about Western civilization. These both are in Europe. First is Magyar. Magyar is spoken by Hungarians, and it shares very few cognates with Indo-European languages. Now, the Indo-European languages are extend from India through Iran, through the European continent, and then, of course, with colonization, those languages are then spread around the world. Magyar shares no cognates, no words commonly derived from Indo-European languages. So it's a language oddity, kind of stuck there in southeastern Europe. There's another language that I'm going to mention here, and that's the Basque. The Basque are people located in northwestern Spain, near the Pyrenees. And linguists have wondered why this language, which also shares no cognates with Indo-European languages, how it survived, how it could maintain its integrity as millions and millions of Indo-European speakers, both the French and the Spanish and the Portuguese, wash over this area. Presumably the Basque speakers were there before the Indo-Europeans. So just a couple of language oddities. I want you to keep in mind that language is intimately tied to power and intimately tied and connected with politics. And we'll see this as we go forward in the course. This is my first lecture discussing those events that occur in prehistory about which we have to speculate. Next time we'll talk about human artifacts pertaining to perhaps the first inklings of religion. Thank you.